Welcome to the Creative Crafters podcast. I have a very special guest today, and Katherine McCrory. And Katherine is the crafter behind KatherineLearnsStuff.com and is a dedicated crafter with a lifelong passion for creativity. However, it was her discovery of the Cricut that truly set her on an exhilarating journey of do-it-yourself projects. This remarkable tool opened up a whole new realm of possibilities, allowing her to delve into various crafting endeavors, ranging from personalized shirts to the art of upcycling old items into stunning creations. Well, welcome, Katherine. I'm so excited to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So the first thing, of course, I want the listeners to know more about who you are and all about how you got started crafting.
Well, I used to be a hidden crafter, I guess. I would craft sort of when no one was watching. So everyone was sort of surprised when I sort of started to get more into crafting, but it really all started one day when I wanted to make some custom shirts. I was tired of paying a whole lot of money for someone else to do them for me. And a friend of mine had a Cricut and she said, "You're crazy. You're paying for these shirts when you can make them yourself. I have this machine. You should try it out." And she did a test run for me and she showed me how it worked. And I was like, I need that shirt, that machine. And I went and bought it pretty much the next day. And I haven't looked back since. I make shirts all the time for friends and family. And if it's your birthday, you're getting a shirt from me. But that's how it sort of started. And then I sort of learned that you could do a lot more things with the Cricut. And then I was like, well, I don't need to just use my Cricut. I can use other tools that I have and do other crafts. And so it sort of started to spiral and get bigger and bigger. And then all of a sudden I'm doing crafts all day, every day.
It's funny how that works out. It's
It
just
is.
start with one thing and then it leads into others. So what other kind of crafting are you doing these days besides t-shirts?
So I'm doing right now, I'm doing a lot of sewing because Halloween's around the corner and Halloween is a huge event at our house. And so I do lots of costumes for the kids. If it's even just a addition to an existing costume or an entire costume for itself. And then I do decorations outside. So I'm doing a lot of sewing right now because everyone has crazy ideas at my house and they require me to put in a lot of hours sewing.
Oh yeah, sewing is a really important part of all the crafting we do. And I know a lot of Cricut crafters are doing just paper and things, but there's a whole other world beyond that, and sewing fits in there extremely well.
And I find too that with sewing though, it's nice because then I can pull my Cricut into it because I always like to customize everything. So I'll put a custom design on it or a custom phrase, and if you sew it, you can just quickly throw it onto your heat press, stamp on a little design, and it's a little bit more customized.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you can do it as a applique as well. So you could print out your design and then sew it on as well. I mean, there's just so many possibilities.
Yeah.
So one of the biggest curiosities of most listeners is figuring out how to be inspired. So you must have a way you get inspired to do a lot of your designs.
So I don't have a shortage of designs. I guess my family is very helpful in helping me come up with ideas of what they want me to do for them. And so, so I was saying for Halloween, right? I just finished my daughter's being a cat for Halloween, and we couldn't find a tail that she liked, so I had to sew her a tail. And so that wasn't on my plan of crafts to do this month, but off we go when we made a tail. And so, anytime sort of my kids or my husband thinks of something that, oh, you should try that, I'm like, oh, you guys are up in the know of what's happening in the universe of Twitter and Instagram and all that. I'm like, oh, you guys know what's going on. I got to do these ones because these ones are the big ones, right? Because they're all into that, and I just sort of stuck here crafting away. So they always provide me with lots and lots of suggestions and projects to do, so I never have a shortage of ideas.
Yeah, that's great having people give you the suggestions, because quite often we end up researching like Pinterest or just scrolling through to see what people are making. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what people want. So you have the advantage. you know what everybody wants. So that's
Yeah.
perfect. Now, you mentioned just now something about on your list of things to craft for the months. It sounds like you're very organized. Can you tell us a little more about that?
So I have a list. I try to follow it. But I'm a list person. I always like to have lists, and that way I can sort of work through things. So I know if I'm struggling with something, I know, okay, I just have a little bit more and I'm done. But so I have a list of things, and I constantly update it with new projects, and I try to organize my month. So, in theory, I should have been done Halloween 6 months ago because that's how the internet works. But I'm just getting to Halloween now because I've kept getting a new project thrown at me like, oh, this is a great idea. And I'm like, oh, you know what? That is a great idea. I got to stop everything and work on this new project. So I have this list that keeps growing. And sometimes it gets put to the back of the list if it's a new idea. But if it's like a great idea, I do it right away. And then sort of things slip on my list. But eventually everything gets done. But it's a very long growing list, and it's great. It's just overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. I love lists as well. I don't think I could get anything done without having something on a list. And I guess with your list, like mine, what happens, you get a ton of things on there, and some of them you decide, nah, I'm not making those. So off they go.
Yeah.
So you imagine, so what motivates you to create stuff? It sounds like your family gives you a lot of time so that you're able to do this as well.
They give me a lot of ideas. Time, I mean, is relative to everyone, and I'm sure you appreciate that as well, because a craft from sort of conception to completion can be quite the ordeal, right? Sometimes it can be a quick one too, and sometimes it can be, this like never ending grind of you can't get through it. And so I try to find time between the cracks, as we say at our house. I've got 5 minutes here. Okay, I'll sketch something up in my notepad, or I've got 20 minutes when the kids are playing video games, so I'll sneak downstairs and do something else, right? But time isn't there's not much of the time, but there's always something to do with it.
Yeah, for some reason, Design Space and my Cricut just draw us in. It's just one of those things. Oh, I can make that when you're walking down the street too. So what do you find the most challenging aspect of what you're doing?
Oh, the most challenging aspect, that's a tough one. I think right now the most challenging thing is time, because I don't seem to have enough time to do all the projects that I want. I have for Halloween coming up, I have like 8 or 10 ideas that I have sort of like spinning in my head. I've got 4 projects on the go right now on top of that. And I'm looking at the date, it's October 5th today, and I'm thinking, I am not going to have time to write all this up before October 31st. But you know what? The nice thing about the internet is, if I can't get it done this year, if I post November 1st, it'll be ready for October next year.
Well, exactly. That will give you a year ahead. That's where you want to be, 6 months ahead. So that'll give you a year ahead.
That's right. So
it seems to me whenever an occasion is there, I know I'm supposed to do it 6 months ahead of time, like you suggested, but I'm always doing it 2 weeks ahead of time. So
yeah, at least it gets done beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
Before someday.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the most challenging part, but what do you find the most rewarding part?
I think the most rewarding thing is when I do a craft and somebody says, that's awesome. Like they really like what I've done, right? So I did the tail for my daughter, and my husband's like, oh my God, that's so amazing. I told him some of the features that I did with it. He's like, oh, that's brilliant. I was like, yes, I did something. And I did another one. I designed some flowers, and a friend was like, oh, those are fake? And I was like, yeah, they're made out of paper. She's like, wow, that's really good. I was like, yes. So just like those little bits of praises where someone's like, yeah, that's a really good project, I really like that, it makes me feel nice. So if it's someone from my mailing list sending me a note saying, hey, that's I love this project you did, it looks so great, I tried it out, just those little bits of like, someone's doing this stuff or someone's appreciating it, it really kind of like makes me feel nice and warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah, it does. And I just love the praise as well for things I make, because quite often I'll make them and I see the imperfections. So what happens for you when that happens?
I always see imperfections. I'm just like, well, I have to like shake my head and keep going, because I think if I stopped at the imperfections, I wouldn't get anything done. Nothing would get published, nothing would get finished. Everything would be like just this big pile of mess behind me.
Yeah, I think we all suffer from that. So if someone wanted to do what you're doing, what advice would you give them?
I would say don't give up if something doesn't work out. Because like crafts are, like we were just saying that, right? You'll notice your own imperfections, but somebody else won't. And honestly, making crafts by yourself and giving them as gifts or keeping them for yourself, it just feels different than if you go out and buy something similar from, even the dollar store or from like some expensive I don't know, big box store, right? It's the feel and the look is different, and I think it's worth the time. It just takes a little bit of getting there, and it's not worth giving up.
Yeah, exactly, because there's nothing like a handmade gift or card. And, you may give it to them and they feel that perhaps, well, yourself, you perhaps feel, oh, they're going to see the flaws and this, that, and the other thing, but they don't. They get the appreciation, and
Yeah.
I'm glad to see that that's part of what you do as well.
Yeah.
So one last question for you is, how can our listeners get a hold of you, or the best place to find all your contact information so they can connect with you and, check out your shop and what you have to offer?
So the best place to find me is at katherinelearnstuff.com. That is my website. I've got all of my crafts, my latest crafts there, and I've got all of my I've got a link to my shop there as well. And then you can check me out on YouTube, where I'm trying to post videos every week right now. I'm at Katherine Learn Stuff on YouTube, and then you can also find me at Pinterest and on Facebook at Katherine Learn Stuff.
Okay, so KatherineLearnStuff.com. So Katherine Learn Stuff is the perfect moniker for them to look for everything that you're doing.
Everything. That's right.
Absolutely perfect. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Creative Crafters podcast. And this has been Katherine McCrory, and be sure to connect with her, KatherineLearnStuff.com. And I will see you next time.